Hello everyone, Salam, Namaste, Adab, and welcome to today's event. We are going to hear Professor Farhat Nasreen from Jamia, a historical overview of sleep, mysteries, and mystic dreams. This is one topic that, honestly speaking, I tell you all that I have no idea what we are going to get it, but hopefully a lot of spirituality. So the event will be introduced, and the speaker will be introduced by Professor Raziuddin Akhil Saab, who has given a talk earlier at this forum from University of Delhi. So welcome everyone, and Professor Razi Akhil.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this program, which is a very, very interesting forum. And also, it is a matter of great pleasure for me to be able to introduce Professor Dr. Farhat Nasreen, who is one of our finest scholar, teacher, person here in Delhi in Jamia Millia Islamia. Jamia is a premier institution of higher research and learning, one of the top universities in the country. And its history department, which is referred to as the Department of History and Culture, is especially one of the very, very reputed departments. Some very prominent history veterans are well known to this audience. I'm remembering especially from the history department, Professor Mushiul Hassan, Professor Narayani Gupta, Professor Mukul Keswan. Now, Professor Farhat Nasreen is the head of the department, and I would, in terms of a personal touch, I'm also proud of the fact that I studied in this department, in the Department of History and Culture in Jamia, in terms of my early training in history. So two things when I was asked to speak on, two things came to mind immediately: the eminence of Jamia as an institution, and the fact is that in our institutions, because of the investment in the last 30-40 years in terms of equal opportunity and rights of different people, that we have a number of very, very accomplished scholars emerging in leadership capacity. So we have vice chancellors, we have directors of our institutions, we also have heads of departments, playing excellent role as leaders in terms of leadership capacity. And so briefly, then looking at Professor Nasreen's CV is there on the Jamia website. Some of the highlights I will quickly present in terms of her training from one of the most reputed college here in Delhi, Lady Shri Ram College. Then going to Aligarh, which is an advanced center for especially for medieval Indian history, in which she specializes. And then back in Jamia here, completing her PhD on this very, very interesting topic of society and culture in the Braj region in North India in the 16th and 17th centuries. Professor Nasreen began her teaching career from the Indian Military Academy in Dehradun in 1997, but since 1999, for 23 years and counting, she has been here in Jamia History Department, and now, as I said, head of the department as well. If you look at the CV, long CV actually, but 2-3 things I would quickly like to highlight from there is especially the books. 3 books from Rupa Publishing House, which would mean that these books will have large dissemination. So, and it is important that historians speak to larger public in a context where relevance of history is increasingly being recognized and asserted, and how history is also abused and misused in the public domain. So It is important that historians come out of the ivory towers and and their safety and protection to speak in public, to sort of educate the public. So three of the books that I will, especially out of some 7 or 8, or maybe 3, 4 forthcoming, I will just mention about this book called Kashf al-Bagawat, which is an important text from Gorakhpur, an eyewitness account of the 1857 revolt. And 1857, 150 years actually generated a lot of material, and as part of that, celebration, this work is important. But more importantly, 2 of her recent books published in 2019 and one last year. If history has taught us anything, so what lessons we learn from that, and how it is important that we learn lessons from history. And a more interesting work on the great Mughals. And the political situation is such and completely at times bizarre that some people are questioning, how can you call a book called The Great Mughals? There was nothing great about the Mughals. But it is important that large public, which is so very uneducated and completely getting swayed by very, very vicious kind of political propaganda, are educated properly by someone who is trained as a historian and historian of medieval India, to be able to speak about the value and relevance of and need for drawing insights from the Mughal rule, governance, governmentality, etc. So these books are very, very important in terms of larger dissemination. A concern that is also represented in Professor Nasreen's outreach in terms of some 150 or more presentations from different fora, so from conferences and symposiums and seminars to radio talks to television shows, to now in the last couple of years, so many webinars, so 150 presentations, I think, and counting. And these touch upon these concerns in her research on politics and society and culture and history of emotions and ethics, etc. Wide-ranging interest. And today's topic, I would think, that is further extension of her interest in history of emotions and ethics, etc. This topic, a historical overview of sleep mysteries and mystic dreams. The scholars of Sufism, scholars of psychoanalysis, etc., have done some work, but generally historians of medieval India, they think that these are mystical, experiences of people that Sufis themselves were not very much interested in talking about. But we know that one of the important role of the Sufis was divination and also dream interpretation. That people with anxieties of different kinds in social, political context of the kind that we are facing today, lots of people need to go to Babas, Sufi Babas or Mazars and Dargahs, or they need to go to perhaps to psychiatrists. And we know that the Islamic demonological framework of diagnosis of mental illness and anxieties are very much similar to the diagnosis in the Freudian psychoanalysis. And we have some very interesting conversations and discussions, interpretations from someone like Dr. Sudhir Kakkar in his several of his works, but especially in a work called Shamans, Mystics, and Doctors. So without taking more time, I will say that maybe Dr. Professor Farhat can start to speak now and take over. Professor Nasreen.
Ji Farhat.
Ji sir. So can I begin?
Yeah.
With your permission?
Sure. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
yeah.
Hi everyone. Good evening. Thank you for being with us for this talk today, this evening. I thank Raziuddin Sahab, Rafat Hussain Sahab, Mirza Faisal Beg Sahab for giving me an opportunity to speak through this forum. And with this, very quickly, I would just start with what I have to say. And I would request the organizers to let me know 5 minutes before I run out of my time, because I may just otherwise just go on, So the first thing that I would like to say is to state the obvious. That is, that sleep is the meta key of the human mind. And when you look how the sleep psychologists define it, they say that it's a reversible behavioral state of perceptual disengagement and unresponsiveness to the environment around you. So it's supposed to be something that you perceive that you are disengaged, although you may not actually be disengaged. That's one thing. The other is, of course, we know that there is within the sleep, there are different patterns. That is the rapid eye movement and the non-rapid eye movement and so on. The sleep is circadian in character, that it'll recur in a 24-hour cycle on its own. And that is, and in fact, that is why somebody like Khamosh Ghazipuri wrote that नींद तो दर्द के बिस्तर पे भी आ सकती है, उनकी आगोश में सर हो ये जरूरी तो नहीं, because it is circadian, it's anyways going to keep coming back to you. But the interesting part about human beings is that we have the capability to ward off sleep when it comes. So we are people who can force ourselves to be awake even though we are feeling sleepy, and we are very good at it. So there might be a price to it, but we'll pay that later, but we can do it. So that is one thing that is there. Then the other thing is that there are two things that matter in sleep. One is that the total time duration for which you sleep, and other is the continuity of that duration. So the total time count and the continuity of that duration. That's what's going to decide the quality of sleep that you have. Now, within that sleep and within that duration, what happens with you? So are you having a nightmare, or are you having a very maybe a dreamless sleep? And then of course there are issues like there's bedwetting, there is sleepwalking, and of course there is insomnia, and so on and so forth. So sleep, we think that it is related to, when you look at it from a distance, you feel that sleep is something that's related to waking up and doing your job well for the day. So that's what sleep is about. So you're fresh. But when you look at the people who work only on sleep, they feel that sleep is a world in itself. So there is a waking world and there is a sleeping world, and there is a world of the dreams, and they are both connected to each other. So how are they connected to each other is a bit that we are going to talk about. When you look at the Atharva Veda, now this interest in the mystery of dreams and sleeping and the world beyond has been there, of course, forever. And the Atharva Veda said that sleep is something that is neither dead nor is it alive. It is the immortal child of the gods. Her parents are Varuni and Yama, the god of death, and her name is Araru. It is called the ender, the death. And in a hymn of the Rig Veda, the devotee goes on to plead sleep, to save the sleeper from nightmares. So there's a scare of nightmare, and someone is praying to sleep that they may be spared of the nightmare, and the nightmares may be transferred to their enemies. In another prayer to Varun, it is said that the worshipper, the worshipper lists a number of things that he's scared of. So he lists wolves, he lists thieves, and he lists nightmares within that. So dreams from the very early times were classified into the Shubh and Ashubh kind of dreams. And then we have a sage whose name was Yajanvatya, who explains in an Upanishad that there are three places for the human soul. One is the living world, and the other is the world on the other side after dying, the post-death world. And the third place is the Swapna, that is the world of the dreams. And he goes on to say that the world of the dreams is a place that is in between both the worlds, and someone who's in the world of Swapna, he can peep into the world on this side, which is the living world, and the post-death world. He can have a look at both of them and perhaps come back to either one of the sides. And that is why it was often said that someone who's sleeping should not be woken up with a jerk, because his soul may just not be there in the body. It may be gone for a wandering, and it's risky to wake people with a jerk. Now, if you look at the ancient cultures, then you would find that in the Greek traditions, the temples of god Asclepius were related to the culture of healing with dreams. And this particular god was supposed to be a child of god Apollo, and abandoned by him. but then he was supposed to have been a great healer. So he was supposed to be a great healer, so much so that Hippocrates and Galen and some of the early medics of the Greek period were initially trained to be priests in this particular god's temple. And then it was believed that he could heal so many people by this dream healing culture, that some other gods decided that he is disbalancing the division between life and death, the number of people who have to live and the people who have to die. So he had to be killed and he had to be removed from the scenario. So it's interesting to see how there has been, this culture of delving into dreams and sleep and trying to understand them. In the Hindustani context, we have this belief that Sri Vishnu sleeps for a long period of time, which is almost 100 plus days, about 118 days or so. And this sleep that he sleeps is not Nidra, because there is a difference between Nidra, that is the ordinary sleep of the ordinary humans, and there is another kind of sleep, which is the Yoga Nidra, which is a kind of a meditation where you are conscious and at the same time you're not conscious also, because you're lost in very, very deep kind of thinking. And this sleep of Sri Vishnu is related to the creation process. So when there is this description of the destruction of the world and the recreation of the world, then it goes like this, that there's going to be, it's there in the Purans. So it goes on like this, that there's going to be a lot of heat. One sun will become, the heat of one sun is going to become equivalent to the heat of 7 suns. And then finally it will start raining, and it will rain so much that the whole world will turn into an ocean. And then Sri Vishnu will blow his breath and all the clouds will pass away. The rain will stop, but there'll be ocean all around, and Sri Vishnu will lie on the Sheshnag and he's going to sleep. And this is known as the Dev Shaya. So this is, he's going to sleep for this period of time. And this period of time, all the auspicious activities are put on hold. So people will not go for pilgrimages, no marriages will be held, no big functions will be held, and so on and so forth. And this is interpreted in context of the fact that this is a tropical kind of a region where you have that there's a lot of life that springs in the rainy season. So you will have insects that are going to come out. There'll be worms that will come out. There are insects that multiply. There are snakes who are going to come out. There are plants and trees and herbs which are going to grow in the rainy season. And if people were walking around from one place to the other, going on pilgrimages, I'm sure all of that would have been disturbed. So you have this thing in place that since Sri Vishnu is sleeping and the gods are asleep, no one has to step out from their house. They have to be at rest. Gods are resting. Once they wake up, then everything will start. Then the movement begins. So you safeguard the biosphere, and then the activity begins later on. And this is known actually the Dev Shaini Ekadashi. So there is a date that comes every year, which is for this year 2022, the date was 10th of July. So 10th of July, the Dev Shaini Ekadashi began, and then it's going to end sometime around Diwali, and then the season of the marriages is going to begin, and everyone's going to step out of their houses, and there's going to be a lot of celebration and activity all over. Then the other interesting thing that we find is, this fear of nightmares that we were just talking about. So frankly speaking, you and me, we all think that sleep, is an easy breezy thing. I mean, it's always fun to just go off to sleep. But if you look at the fear of nightmares, then that makes you rethink. And why the people, especially in the past, were so very, very scared of nightmares. I feel that they perhaps attached meaning to the dreams. They attached a lot of meanings to the dreams, and there was an effort to interpret them. And thus, the nightmares were scary because they felt that they might see something which will disturb them. Anyways, despite all this, there were people who just wanted to sleep. We have the story of this man from the Vishnu Puran. There was a particular man whose name was Muchukunda. And Muchukunda, he worshipped the gods for a number of years, and then finally he asked for a boon. And the boon was this, that he could sleep for endless number of years. And the god said that if anyone woke him up, I mean, if he woke up on his own, good for him. But if someone dared to wake him up, then that person would just burn. He would just burn to death. And that's going to happen automatically. And then Sri Krishna knew about this, and Sri Krishna had to destroy one of his enemies, whose name was Kala Yavana. So Sri Krishna took Kala Yavana to the place where Muchukunda was sleeping, and he tricked him into waking Muchukunda up, and then this fellow was he was dead, and so he got rid of his enemy. So it's interesting that there was a boon like this, and there was a man like this who took the power to sleep endlessly as a gift from gods. And of course, there is Ibn Khaldun, who anyway says that sleep is a gift from God, because according to him, it's an occasion when you can just get rid of the mundane things of this world, and you can think of the higher things, and you can even get to have a vision of what's happening on the other side of the world. And maybe if the creator wants to communicate anything with you, then that's a possibility. So that is what Ibn Khaldun says. But anyways, so now in the Abrahamic chain of religions, you have this fantastic narrative about the sleepers of the cave. And the sleepers of the cave, because in this particular narrative, you find that sleep is being used to safeguard these people. Because, they were, at that time, the faith that they pursued was being persecuted, and thus they went off to sleep. They went to a cave and they went off to sleep. Now, the Quran says that their number is debated. They were 3, or they were 7, or they were 5, and they had a dog. And for how many years did they sleep? Some say that they slept for 300 years. Some say they slept for 309 years. And there is this advice that don't get into all that debate, but go to the crux of it. So the crux of it is this, that when they woke up and they discussed amongst themselves that for how long do you think we stayed here? They said that maybe a day or maybe half a day. So basically, sleep being used as a means to protect them, because when they finally got up after whatever number of years and they went down with their currency, they got to realize that times had changed, the government had changed, and they were safe. So everything had changed. So sleep as a protection. This is a very huge narrative. But when you think of it in the smaller everyday terms, you think that so many times one would say that just sleep over this problem. Just sleep over this problem. Maybe if you are having an argument, don't try to win it just now. Maybe you just go off to sleep and the argument ends there. So there are these benefits. There is protection in sleep. This is just a derivative. Then of course you have sleep that comes unasked for. That comes in the case of Kumbhakaran. Kumbhakaran was the brother of Ravan, who was supposed to have been a notorious demon. And he was also at the same time a great tapasvi and a very determined person. So he was into again tapasya and prayers, and he wanted to ask for the Indra Asan, the throne of Indra. And Sri Indra's throne and his court was supposed to be one of the most dramatic and the most grand places anyone could have thought of. So all the gods and the devs are very scared of this scenario, and thus they had it this way, that Sri Saraswati sat on the tongue of Kumbhakaran when he was finally going to ask for the boon, and instead of asking for Indra Asan, he asked for Nidra Asan, and he went off to sleep. So the boon was granted immediately, and it was said that he would sleep for 6 months. He'll get up only for 1 day, create havoc, trouble people, and then go off to sleep again for another long span. So this another narrative where you find that sleep is actually saving somebody else. So that is one thing. Then we find that Al-Ghazali, when he and then there is this this cross-cultural metaphor where you find that so many times sleep is compared to death. When writers talk about it, so many of the mystics talk about it. So there is this tendency to just simply compare the two of them. And Al-Ghazali, in his landmark work, which is Zikr al-Maut Wama Badahu, which is considered to be one of the greatest classics written on the understanding of Islam and its core principles, he liquefies this whole idea of likening sleep with death. He completely destroys it. What does he say? He says that death is the most fearsome terror that the believer will encounter in this world or in the next. It is worse than being carved up with saws or being cut with scissors or being boiled in cauldrons if a dead man could be brought back to life to tell this world's people of death. They would find no profit in life and take no pleasure in sleep. So there are two things that he says, that if people got to know what death is like, then there are two sides of the scale. On the one hand, he says that there are the pleasures of this world, and on the other side is the pleasure of sleeping. And I mean, it's actually quite interesting, because if you sleep too much, then you might actually not have the other pleasures of the world. Because to have the other pleasures of the world, so many times you have to really work hard and give up on your sleep. So there is something like this. And this is what Ghazali talks about. But what happens is that when he says this, and he says that he's establishing that sleep and death are different things. And they cannot be likened. But of course, as we proceed, you will find that the Sufistic, mystic writers, they took a lot of pleasure. But the thing is that the death and the sleep that they were talking about so many times, the sleep was not the physical sleep, but it was the mental sleep of not being awakened enough. So that we'll come to a little while later. But coming to the Bhagavad-Gita first, in the Bhagavad-Gita, when Sri Krishna is giving a sermon to Sri Arjun, he says, he advises that there has to be a moderation in everything. So he advises moderation, and he advises moderation in sleep as well. So he says that he who eats too much of food or too little, who is always drowsy and restless, will never succeed in the yoga of meditation. For the man who is moderate in food and pleasure, moderate in action, moderate in sleep and waking, moderate in sleep and waking, yoga destroys all sorrow. And then he goes on to say that there are people who are born of three types of natures. And that is the sattva and the rajas and the tamas. The sattva are, of course, those who are spiritualists, who are really not interested in the world. The rajas are those who are interested in the world, very ambitious, very hardworking, maybe achieving a lot in this world. That is the rajas. And the tamas are those who are not interested in anything at all, neither this nor that. And those are the guys, according to this sermon, they are the guys who are most sleepy. They're most sleepy. They're most overtaken by, lethargy and not doing anything and prone to that. Now, the interesting question is, so do the other guys don't sleep? Or can they sleep? Or should they sleep? And what is their sleep requirement? So how do we kind of grapple with this? So then comes in the idea that there is one thing which is known as the sleep of the tamasic vritti. And there is a sleep of the sattvic vritti, and there is a sleep of the rajas vritti. The tamasic vritti is sleep for the sake of sleeping. Sleeping because you want to escape. You don't want to do anything. You don't want to face anything. You don't want to work hard at all. But the other sleep is you sleep because of spiritual reasons. Like the kind that I was just saying, that Ibn Khaldun says that sleep is a gift from God, because that's an opportunity where you may dream something which is of value, which has some meaning. So therefore, there is the spiritual sleep, and it's an occasion where you cut off from the whole world. And when you think of the cutting off of the whole world and going off to sleep, it also actually would have what we call sleep incubation rituals. So it wasn't, of course, there is this whole idea where people would tell stories to their children for them to go off to sleep. So there might be these fancy fairy tales which people tell. And then we would find that in the earlier days, there were guys who would employ servants who would talk them to sleep. You find in the Babar-Nama, Humayun, Babar thinks that it's important to note down that the man who used to tell stories to Humayun has died. It is noted in the Babar-Nama. So it seems that that man was important. And when you think of Humayun as a grown-up man, he was easily 40 plus when his brother Kamran had betrayed him. And at that time, he was absolutely restless because he had lost Kabul. He'd already lost Hindustan. He was on his way back to Persia, and his brother had betrayed him, and he was sleepless. So he lay his head on the lap of one of his nobles, and he asked that noble to sing a lullaby. And he's a grown-up man, but there's a need for something like that, for a soothing sleep incubation. But when we think of the spiritualists, the sleep incubation for them is something like this, something chanting, something, maybe sleeping in a certain posture, maybe even sleeping in a certain place, and so on and so forth, getting absolutely clean and dressed up for sleep, and so on and so forth. So all of that. So we find that the person to whom that sermon was being given, Sri Arjun, in the Bhagavad-Gita, is supposed to be someone who had conquered sleep. And we're told that he could do without sleeping at all. So what was he doing? So there comes in the concept of the Yoga Nidra. The Yoga Nidra is something like a power nap. So, and how does the Yoga Nidra work? So Yoga Nidra is like, something like you have asanas and you have exercises for the body. In the same way, it's an exercise for the mind. So you have to keep getting rid of the crap inside your head. And maybe just as you empty a dustbin, you have to keep emptying your mind of all the crap and nonsense that you collected over the days and keep throwing it out. And thoughts will keep coming to you. New thoughts will keep coming to you, and you have to keep emptying your mind and keep filling it with things which are related to spiritualism and so on and so forth, and your deity, etc., and so on. So that you go into literally a kind of a trance, a meditative trance, where you are neither awake nor are you asleep. You're conscious but still unconscious, and so on and so forth. But you're cut off from this world and connected elsewhere with something else. And the other interesting part is that when you read medieval history, you'll find that so many of the rulers used to say that even when I'm sleeping, don't think that I'm asleep. They would be saying that to their commanders, their ministers, their people, to be aware. So they would say that even when I'm sleeping, don't think that I'm asleep. I'm awake. I'm always ready. So maybe it is this state of readiness to take on wherever from the point that you left is the idea. So that is the idea that we need to hold. The Yoga Nidra, again, it comes in the Vishnu Puran as well, because there it appears almost like a deity, where it is said that it is the Yoga Nidra. The Yoga Nidra, when translated into English, is translated as the sleep of devotion, that it helped in the transference of the unborn child of Devaki into the womb of Sri Rukmini, so that eventually Sri Vishnu's avatar, Sri Krishna, could be born, and Kans thereafter met his end the way he had. So that's it. Then we find, that there are scriptures will talk about this dreams, and how there were dreams that were intuitive. The intuitive dreams, say for example, if you look at the Mahabharata, in the Mahabharata you have Karan, who was fighting from the side of the Kauravas against the Pandavas. He had told Sri Krishna about the nightmares that he was having before the huge battle was to be fought. And he said, what did he see? He saw that there were meteoroids that were falling, there were hurricanes, there were earthquakes, there were elephants that were trumpeting widely, there were horses that were crying, there were people who were not eating anything, and yet their stomach would get upset as if they'd eaten a lot. And then he said that I saw that Sri Yudhishthir had climbed over a mountain of bones, and on top of it, he was eating rice and ghee from a golden bowl. And then finally, he said that I saw that you gave him the globe to Sri Yudhishthir, and Yudhishthir swallowed the whole globe. So he is supposed to have narrated his nightmares to Sri Krishna. That's a part of the narrative of Mahabharata as far as these intuitive dreams are concerned. Then, of course, there was also, the dream that we would find in the Ramayana. Say, for an example, in the Ramayana also you would find that Bharat, Sri Ram's brother, was having dreams when his father was to die. And what he saw was that Dashrath, he saw in a state where his hair was disheveled and he was wearing faded clothes, and that he'd fallen into a pit, and that he was drinking oil from his from his hands. That is what he saw. And that he was laughing again and again for no rhyme or reason. And then he saw that there was a demoness who was dressed in red color, who was taking away Sri Dashrath with herself. And when Bharat got up from this dream, he said that he's feeling guilty about something. He felt that someone's going to die. He felt that something bad is going to happen. And thinking about this demoness in red clothes taking away Sri Dashrath, we also have a parallel imagery of Lilith, who is supposed to be a demoness in the biblical and the Christian lore. So that is something that again we have to look at. Then, of course, if you get into the Buddhist trends, you have the dream of Maya, who is the mother of Buddha, who dreamt that there was a white elephant who entered inside her womb. That was her dream. Then you find the dream of Gopa, the wife of Buddha, before he left her. That was a nightmare. And then you have Sri Buddha's dream, where he finds that he's dipping his limbs into 4 huge oceans, and that there are animals of all kinds who are around him, and kind of they are subservient to him. So those are the kind of dreams, and dreams are also basically, a lot of them may be conveyed in a certain way to fortify the historic characters and these spiritual and the divine characters that we are dealing with. In fact, in the Sumerian civilization, there was a god by the name of Zangara, who was supposed to be the god of dreams. And there was a dream typology in ancient China. So you had the Zhengmeng, which was regular and positive dreams. You had Engmeng, which was the nightmares and vague dreams. You had Saimeng, which was yearning dreams, where you were like in the Freudian concept, where Sigmund Freud feels that dreams are, basically a manifestation of unfulfilled desires and everything that you wanted but you didn't have, and your childhood traumas and your youth issues and so on and so forth. So it's something like that, the yearning dreams. And then you have the Wu-Meng, which is when you sleep dreamlessly. There's a Z-Meng, which are happy dreams. And you have the Q-Meng, when the problems of your life follow you in the dreams. So what you're dreaming of is something that you're actually worried about. This type, actually, according to sleep psychiatrists, is a very, very dangerous thing when you start dreaming of things which are related to your real life problems. Because if we say that dreams are a getaway, or your sleeping is a getaway from your everyday problems, then you don't get away from them if they follow you inside your head in your dreams as well. And the other thing is that if you wake up in between in the night, and the sleep psychiatrists say that if you wake up even for 10 minutes and the problems that you were dreaming about were real, then you will feel that you've been awake for hours. You will feel that you would be awake for absolutely hours. So that is, again, something that we need to think of. Then, of course, so there is, this fear of nightmares, and the kind of nightmares that we were just talking about. So the possibilities in the world of dreams were absolutely endless. Anything could happen. You could think of anything, and you could see anything. And so no wonder that the world, the world of the awake is completely bound by boundaries. Things that you can have or you cannot have, people that you can be close to or you cannot be close to, and so on and so forth. But in the world of dreams, you could have anything. So that was something that this structured world was very worried about. So you have this, Katha Upanishad, which captures it beautifully. It says that sitting, the soul goes afar. Sitting, the soul goes afar, because your thoughts can just go anywhere. But sleeping, they can go anywhere and everywhere. They're absolutely limitless. And this limitless possibility was trying to be reined in by the hymns, the chants, the prayers, the sleep incubation, the dream incubation, and so on. You have in the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda has a hymn in which Agni is summoned, and it is said that the killer of demons protect the pregnant women and their unborn children as they sleep. The imagery of the demon who approaches these women in the dark is quite eerie. I will just read it out to you. It goes on to say like this: the one who bewitches you with sleep and darkness and lies with you, we will drive him away from here. The one who spreads apart your two thighs, the one who lies between a married pair, who licks the inside of your womb, we will drive him away from here. The one who's changing into your brother, your husband, your lover, and lies with you and wishes to kill your offsprings, we will drive him away from here. So there is this absolutely scary kind of imagery of somebody whom you cannot see, but who's there and who can get inside your head. Now, a very close parallel to this comes from a prayer from the Quran. It goes like this: that say, I seek refuge with the Lord of the dawn, from the mischief of created things, from the mischief of darkness as it overspread.
Well, momentarily freezing situation in Delhi. I mean, just wait for a 10 seconds, I guess.
But her connection is all right, it seems. Maybe some issue there.
Yeah, I mean, there is some issue with the internet, I guess.
Yeah. But she's connected very well, it seems, on the...
Well, she was all quite well, but things there can happen. I mean,
Yeah, you are not sure about these things.
yeah, she will come back. I mean,
Yes.
Farhat, आप
Sorry.
unmute कर लें.
Sorry. Ji, I'm sorry. There was this. We have a very bad weather condition today this side. I'm terribly sorry about this. All right. So I hope I'm audible now.
जी, आप audible हैं. जी.
All right. And then it goes on. The next part of it says, I say, I seek refuge with Lord and the cherisher of mankind, the king of mankind, the God of mankind, from mischief of the whisperer of evil, who withdraws after his whisper, who whispers into the hearts of the mankind amongst jinns and men. Whenever I read these, actually I feel pretty scared, because when you talk about heart, it's actually the soul, because there's nothing like the dil, there's actually the soul. So when you compare this, what the Rig Veda is talking about, the shape shifter, this whisperer, it's the devil, the evil which is around you. A large part of it might just be inside your own head. So it's inside your own head. And it's just no wonder that the Atharva Ved says that in case if you have nightmares and you're feeling scared at night, then you have to change the way you think. You have to basically purify your soul and you're going to have better dreams. So it's about purification of your own soul. That was something which was very, very important for them. Then, of course, you would find that there is this, this culture where people would compare sleep with the mental sleep, with mental, basically not really knowing the truth about the world, about spiritualism and all of that. And a lot of mystics would use that kind of a metaphor and simile. So you have Attar who writes that don't sleep, get up, because the one whom we love is awake and he's waiting for us. So don't sleep, get up. And this getting up is the spiritual awakening. It's not the physical awakening that we're talking about. And then we find that, he talks about and why there is this urgency to get up. Why can't we sleep for some more time? Because he says that we could have slept for longer. We could have slept for whatever time we like. But the fact is that the time for death will always be sudden. Because no matter how much you feel that I'm ready to die, you are not. And every time death takes people by surprise, no matter how prepared they think they are. So therefore, it's always time to get up. So that's it. And there were some people, of course, who took it literally. Somebody like Akbar who said that, well, if you want to elongate your life, then you cut down on your sleeping hours. And he used to try to do that so that you sleep less and thus you live long. So that was the kind of his perception of sleeping and getting up. But the Sufis, of course, they think far more differently. Then there's a very interesting description that he gives, that Attar gives about one of the Sufis. He says that mighty and glorious Lord has people who stand entirely through him, who move and rest through him, who live through him, who are awake through him, who sleep through him, who contemplate through him, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty much like those of people of the yogic kind, something like Sri Arjun that we were talking about, same kind of imagery you can see here. Of course, Rumi is someone who speaks so much about death and the spiritual awakening. That's one of his favorite themes that he talks about. And he goes on to say, evil and pure wine and dregs I am, now old boy, now young newborn babe I am. When I die, don't say he died, just say his lover woke him up and took him away. And then there's another line from Rumi where he says, I've gone mad, and madmen never sleep. A madman, what does he know about sleep? God doesn't sleep, so none of that. I am mad with love, so I cannot sleep. So he says that. And at the same time, he goes on to say that if I'm not mad by now, then that is madness. So he's saying कि मुझे नींद नहीं आती है क्योंकि मैं पागल हूँ. And the other thing that he's saying कि और अगर तुम इस मोहब्बत में अभी तक पागल नहीं हुए हो और आराम से सो रहे हो, इसका मतलब तुम पागल हो. अगर तुम अभी तक पागल नहीं हुए हो, इसका मतलब तुम पागल हो और तुम आराम से सो रहे हो. So that's it. So Rumi, of course, he talks a lot about this. And then he says that so many of these Persian philosophers would say that once you say to God that you give me sabr and you promise love to him, he'll test you. He'll test you. He'll say, come, let me test you, whether you really love me. So if you say that I love you, God, and I'm going to, I'm going to leave everything in this world for you. And you get up and you try to meditate on him and you're thinking about him and you start feeling sleepy. So he'll test you with sleep. He'll test you with sleep. You say that I'm going to leave food for you and he's going to test you with hunger. And whatever you say that I'm going to leave for you, he's going to test you with that. And sleep features very, very prominently in the mystic discourse for those tests, those parameters of tests. So the circadian character of sleep and the physical need for sleep is absolutely incredibly overwhelming. And then you have this narrative where there was once a Sufi, again coming from Attar, there was once a Sufi who heard about another man who had not slept for years and years. And he had just been meditating on God. And the senior Sufi said that, well, I want to see this man. And he went to see him. And the moment he said to him, the moment he reached there, he said to this junior Sufi who hadn't slept for years, he said that what a waste you've been, because the quality of your prayers would have been far better if you would have slept. The quality of your prayers and because you could have done so much more for the people, for human beings, if you had slept. So you had to sleep like the ordinary human beings and get up and do things. It wasn't meant to be like this. So, and the moment this guy who had been awake and he was fighting his physical need and doing nothing else except for just standing in meditation, the moment he heard this and he realized what he had done, he just dropped dead. And then he slept forever. It's a narrative which comes again from the Persian medieval Sufi sources. Anyways, so we would find, that Ziauddin Barni in the Tarikh-e-Firozshahi writes that Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia was someone who was approached by Alauddin Khilji when he was worried about what was happening to his armies in the Deccan, and he asked the Sheikh whether he had received any basharat, which was supposed to be good news about the armies. And the Sheikh, of course, said that there are going to be many more victories and so on and so forth. So you find that there was always this interest in getting a basharat, and later on what came to be known as the istikhara. The istikhara the word istikhara comes from the word khair. And khair means that everything's going to be fine. And thus there were people who would, not only that, they would approach the spiritualists to ask for the interpretation of their dreams, But at the same time, they would also try to sleep in such a way with incubation and with prayers, so that they themselves dream what is the right thing to do. So istikhara became a thing that was there. Then, of course, there is Nizami Ganjavi, the author of his most famous work is the Laila Majnun. But a lesser read work, of course, is the Haft Pecker. But let me tell you that whether lesser read or not, Babar in the Babarnama certainly talks about both these works. And he says that his father, Umar Sheikh Mirza, had read both of them. So he has something to say about both these works. So in the Haft Pecker, there is a king who's advising his son. And he says to him that I'm going to sleep, so you wake up now. And the king was very ill, so he was going to actually die. So he said that I'm going to sleep, but you wake up now. That was the sermon that he was giving. As far as the Islamic structure of belief system is concerned, and the idea of submission to God, it rests on the dream of Abraham, the Abrahamic chain of religion. In fact, all of it would cite this. And that is the dream of Abraham, where he was to sacrifice his son. Which of the sons, I don't want to get into that debate. But it goes on like this, that when he went to his son, he said, "Oh, my son, I have seen a dream that I am sacrificing you. So tell me what you think of it." He replied, "Oh, father, do as you are commanded, and God willing, you will find me steadfast." When they both submitted to God, to note, when they both submitted to God and he had laid his son face down, we called out to him, "You have fulfilled the dream." So the dream and the submission and the absolute faith in the dream, that the dream was a true dream, and that it had to be executed in totality. That is where the whole idea of submission rests. And there is no compromise on that. It rests like that. So dreams per se became a very important part of the whole structure of the Islamic way of looking at things. So it became very, very important. Then, of course, you had, we know that Yusuf / Joseph was supposed to be the great interpreter of dreams. We know that. But the interesting part is that, I'm sorry, the light is gone. You can't see me. The light will come back, then you'll be able to see me. But you have this very interesting love story, which is there in the Quran, of Zulekha, who'd fallen in love with Yusuf. And then Jami, who is a medieval Persian Sufi, Maulana Jami, then he gives a rendering of this story of Zulekha and Yusuf. He writes that Zulekha had in fact dreamt that she is going to marry somebody who's stunningly good looking, and she's going to meet him in Egypt. And that's why she went there, because she was herself from a very rich family, and she had so many matches which were there for her. But she left all of that because she believed in that one dream. And she went there and she got married to this other man. And when she finally saw him, she said, "Damn, this is not the guy whom I dreamt of. He's not my dream man." And then the search begins, and then, Yusuf and Zulekha will take ages to be together. And so much so that God will have to grant youth to Zulekha again to be actually a partner of Yusuf. Fantastic, absolutely. And Jami brings in Zulekha's sleep into this whole narrative. So I would not emphasize more on Yusuf's dream, because it's Joseph's dream, because it's very well known. Another quick dream that I would refer to here is the one which is related to the Surah Fateh of the Quran, where the Prophet had dreamt that he's going to go to the Kaaba. And the Umrah actually didn't happen that time the way it was supposed to happen. And then you have the Surah Fateh, in which Quran says that God has given in all truth, shown his messenger a true vision, in which he said, "God willing, you will most certainly enter the sacred mosque in safety, without fear, shaven-headed or with hair cut short. God knew what you did not, and had given you a victory beforehand." That again goes about that. So you would find that in the Arabic setup, basically in the Arabic cultural setup, you had to have a classification of dreams. So the bad dreams were called hulum, the manam were the ordinary dreams, and Ruya were the heavenly visions. And thus, and of course, the Istikhara that I have already spoken to you about. Then, of course, there is the Bakhtiyar Nama, where you find that the interpretations were very, very important. Like there was a king who dreamt that, sir, in case if I'm running out of time, please tell me, because there are other important parts of it that I would like to touch upon. Please let me know if I'm exceeding.
Of course, no, you can continue. There is a, if it is something for the ordinary people, not from prophets or any culture or religion, there are interests generated here in the question box. That
sure.
What about us
sure.
mortals?
Sure, absolutely, right. So we come to the bottle straight away. Now, there was this very, very interesting input that Professor David very, very kindly shared with me. I'm very grateful to you, Professor, for this. Absolutely indebted. Thank you so much. So I would just like to share this with you, that he's worked on the dreams of Sir Syed. And he begins with, this nightmare that Sir Syed had as a child, which is narrated. And then what Professor David basically talks about is this, that we have to first see that when the dreams were actually noted down. So some of the dreams that Sir Syed supposedly dreamt were in his childhood, but he was noting them down very late. So the sensibilities of the times actually creep into the way that he has noted down the dreams. And then how they have been reinterpreted and represented in the 19th century to an audience which was, judging Sir Syed in various ways. So he gets us into that kind of an argument. And then the very basic point that Professor David makes is this, that as authors and historians, we say that, and also as readers, of course, more likely as readers, we say that know your author. When you read a book, you must know your author, because only then you will know that what his biases or prejudices can be, from where is he coming from. So Professor David very wisely says that know your dreamer. So if you're reading a dream, then know your dreamer. What could he be talking about? And whether, because you would never know whether he's actually telling the truth or what is he telling you. So you have to be careful with that. Absolutely excellent observation. In fact, with this, I would like to add that there was a man called Ibn Sirin in the medieval Arabia who used to give different interpretations for the same dream to different people, because he would be looking at the dreamer. So, and then he would give an interpretation. So even if the two people dreamt the same dream, the interpretation would still differ. And no wonder somebody like Shakil Badayuni thus wrote, Chaudhry ka chand ho, या आफ्ताब हो, जो भी हो तुम खुदा की कसम लाजवाब हो. And then he goes on to say, जाने बहार तुम किसी शायर का ख्वाब. So he is not saying माफ कीजिएगा कि किसी इंजीनियर का ख्वाब हो. He is saying कि तुम किसी शायर का ख्वाब. So that is, catching on to who can dream of what kind of things. Then of course, there is this idea of sleep as a moral background. So what are the kind of, when you think of life and you think of what are the things that regrets are made of, because by the time you grow up a little, you understand that what are the kind of things that you would regret. And thus there can also be a list of things over which you can lose sleep. If you look at the Macbeth, I dare say before Professor Anisur Rahman, that it cites that methought I heard a voice cry, sleep no more. Macbeth does murder sleep. So when Macbeth murdered the king, when he betrayed the king, he was not just killing the king, he was killing his sleep as well. And also Lady Macbeth. I don't need to add any further to that. She goes crazy because she's so upset about it and she can't sleep and she just becomes a night walker and so on and so forth. But then closer home, there's another very interesting story as far as, this moral background, sleep as a moral battleground comes in. We have this story from Premchand, and the story is called Mantra. It's about a doctor, a rich doctor, whose name is Dr. Chadda. And there is a poor farmer whose son is dying, and the farmer comes to him for his son's treatment. And Dr. Chadda is in a great hurry because he has to go for playing golf. So he doesn't look at that child. And it goes on like this. I'll just narrate you a bit. Can I speak in Hindi? Can I speak in Hindi? Okay. So he says, हुजूर बड़ा गरीब आदमी हूँ. मेरा लड़का कई दिन से इतना ही बोल पाया था कि डॉक्टर साहब बीच में बोले कल आना कल. बुढ़े ने घुटने टेक कर जमीन पे सर रख दिया. दुहाई है सरकार, लड़का मर जाएगा. हुजूर 4 दिन से आंखें नहीं खोली हैं. डॉक्टर चड्डा ने कलाई पर नजर डाली और कहा कि सिर्फ 10 मिनट बाकी हैं. गोल्फ क्लब में जाने में देर हो रही थी. सिर्फ 10 मिनट बाकी हैं. गोल्फ स्टिक उठाई और बोले कल सवेरे आओ, हमारे खेलने का समय है. बूढ़े ने पगड़ी उतार कर चौखट पर रख दी और रो रो कर बोला, हुजूर बस एक निगाह देख लेते, बस एक निगाह. लड़का हाथ से चला जाएगा सरकार. 7 लड़कों में यही एक बच रहा है हुजूर. हम दोनों रो रो कर मर जाएंगे सरकार. आपकी बढ़ती हो, आपकी उम्र बड़ी हो. And then many years pass by, and this doctor becomes very, very rich, and this old man loses his son, of course. And after many years, this doctor has 2 children, 1 daughter, and his only son, Kailash. His son is bitten by a snake, and this man is the only person in that area who knows how to deal with the poison through a chant. So he knew the mantra, how to do it. And now somebody comes to this fellow, this old man, whose name is Bhagat. So someone comes to Bhagat and he says, see that Dr. Chadda's son has been bitten by a snake and he's going to die. And now this man is in a dilemma because he's not sure whether he should go and save this doctor's son or not. And then you find that he's going off to sleep. His wife goes off to sleep. He's supposed to lie down and go off to sleep. And the description goes like this, that उसकी वाइफ को कह रहे हैं कि बुढ़िया लेट गई और बुढ़े ने कुप्पी बुझाई. He was having a hookah, कुप्पी बुझाई और कुछ देर खड़ा रहा और फिर बैठ गया और अंत में लेट गया. अब पर ये खबर उसके हृदय पर बोझ की तरह मालूम हो रही थी. It was like a stone on his heart that man's son was dying and he was going off to sleep. मालूम हो रहा था कि जैसे उसके सारे कपड़े गीले हो गए हों, जैसे उसके पैरों में कीचड़ लग गया हो, उसके अंदर कोई चीज ऐसी थी जो उसे बिस्तर से उठ के बाहर जाने के लिए घसीट रही थी. वो उठा और उसकी his wife wakes up and she says कि कहाँ जा रहा है. He says कि नहीं, मैं देख रहा था कि कितनी रात हो गई है. She says अभी बहुत रात है, अभी सो जाओ. Then again he lies down again, but still he can't, and he gets up again and he goes out. And finally when he goes out, then the chowkidar is there, the watchman is there. He says, are you going somewhere? It's a cold night. He says, yeah, I'm not going out anywhere. I just come out to see. What do you think the time would be? The chowkidar says 1 a.m. And by 2 a.m., this man is at Chadda's residence. And he saves his son. He saves his son. And then finally, when he comes back, he and the whole narrative revolves around the fact that he cannot sleep till the time that he saves Chadda's son. He just cannot go off to sleep because his conscience is not letting him sleep. And finally, when he saves Chadda's son, Chadda recognizes him, and he recognizes that he had in fact let this fellow's son die years ago. And then, of course, this Premchand, of course, he doesn't answer whether Dr. Chadda lost his sleep after this or he didn't. Now, there's one quick thing, other thing that I would like to talk about, which is this, that in the Haftpacker, there is an idea that when we sleep, does our luck also sleep? Does our fate sleep when we sleep? Or does it keep working? In the Haftpacker, there is a prince who says, the fortune that luck, fortunate are those whose luck befriends their sleep. And if their luck befriends their sleep, then they can sleep for as long as they like. They can sleep for as long as they like because the luck will keep working for them in any case. So that is something they talk about. And then, of course, you have number of narratives, say, for example, the Gulbakavli, the Sleeping Beauty, the Gulbakavli, in which you find that the prince falls in love with a sleeping princess. And she's sleeping, she doesn't wake up, but there's somebody who falls in love with her and that changes her life forever. And with this, I would come to one dramatic piece of sleeping and somebody falling in love and changing their life forever. This comes from the classic Pakiza, where you have this woman sleeping in the train and there is a man who walks in and who writes down on a piece of paper आपके पाँव देखे बहुत हसीन हैं, इन्हें जमीन पर मत उतारिएगा, मैले हो जाएंगे. Saw your feet, they are very beautiful. Don't place them on the ground, they will get dirty. And bang, this woman falls in love with this man while she was asleep. And she keeps that little chit with herself, and that turns her life over. Thereafter, she is just into him without meeting him ever. So that's that. And then, of course, you had Bertrand Russell, who said that people should not work for more than 4 hours in a day, in praise of idleness, his great philosophy. No one took him seriously, but if we did, perhaps we would have had much more of time to sleep. I remember when I was a kid, my mom used to wake me up with these little poems, which were like this, you know, कि सुबह सवेरे हर कोई जागा, जाके अपने काम को भागा, अब जागे शहर गुलिस्तां जागे, जंगल और बयाबा जागे, जी उठने की ख्वाहिश जागी, हिम्मत जागी, कोशिश जागी. And then there was another poem that she would say कि उठ बैठो अब सोने वालों, अपना अपना काम संभालो, मुंह धोकर कुछ खाना खा लो, पढ़ने जाओ पढ़ने वालों. And I used to say, oh my God, फिर सुबह हो गई, फिर स्कूल जाना पड़ेगा. Oh no, what the hell? And then she had a remedy poem for that also. She would say, पढ़ला का लिखला का ऐसी तैसी, छीलक घास चराए भैंसी. Don't worry, you can always go off to sleep. There are other options in life. So if the luck is in your side, you can very well go off to sleep. Something will work out for you. And I think with this, I would just stop here. Thank you so much for your patience and for being here. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, wonderful, so intense and so much material. Professor Nisur Rahman Sahab, your concluding remarks. After that, we will be open for many other
Okay. Okay, thank you, Rati Sahab. It was a very illuminating talk, I must say, Professor Farhat Nasreen. Lots of research that you shared with us this evening. Evening means here in India. And almost you have covered huge ground, I must say, from various sources, from the Greek to India and to other places and to authors and to dreams and the dreamers and the great dreamers, etc. One can't expect better than what you have done already, because dream is a subject about which one cannot ever offer any kind of an exhaustive or the last research that you can ever have on this idea or on this experience of dream. But just to share a few thoughts about what you have said, and finally to sum it up and to bring this discussion or this talk to an end, let me say that this is one of the subjects which has been a part of many disciplines. You would know this is a subject of psychology, of medicine, of literature, of history and philosophy, to be more precise. And therefore, you have discourses from all these areas that have come to us during all these years, right from the ancient times to now. But there is enough commonality in the three Abrahamic religions that we have referred to, Islam and Christianity and Judaism. You see that in Islamic view, you have also referred to this, but let me recall it my own way, that there are three kinds of dreams and it comes from Sahih Muslim, where it says that there are three types: good dreams about good tidings, and then there are bad dreams, which are about misery, and they are induced by Satan. And the third one, which is more important for us, is this, that some of the dreams are our own imagination, comes out of our own preoccupations and our own preconceptions that we have had all the life that we have been having through. But the Quranic view is that sleep is a boon. And it has been referred to in the Quran at many places that it is a boon, and it's a kind of a charger. And that is how it has been referred to in the Quran at several places. I may not go into the details of that. There are Muslim scholars who have really theorized upon that. You have first Ibn Razi, who speaks a lot about dream and theorizes it in very clear terms. You have Ibn al-Jafar, and you have Avicenna, also Avicenna that you call. If you come to the Christian view, you will find that the Old and the New Testament together use the word dream more than 100 times. And in different situations and contexts, the dream has been spoken about in the Old and the New Testament. And for example, in Psalm, which I was reading yesterday when I was thinking of your talk, and I find several mentions of that in that particular chapter. Bad dreams and nightmares are spoken about there. But if you come to the Judaistic view, so to say, dreams are outlandish. Even outlandish dreams are very significant, he says, Judaistic view says. But they say that they are the mediators of the divine will. and which is a very important point for me to think about when you say that they are the mediators, the dreams are the mediators of the divine will, which makes me think about that. But when you come to Hindu view, which interests me more because it's very philosophical. When I talked about the Judaistic view and the Islamic view, but when I come to the Hindu view, I find it much more engrossing. It says consciousness is divided into three parts: waking up, dreaming up, and deep sleep. And then finally says dreaming and deep sleep are more important than waking. Very interesting. Dreaming and sleep are more important than making, and then refers to yoga nidra, which Farhat was also speaking about, yogic sleep. And this is a very blissful state of sleep. 8 steps are related with the various kinds of the body that we suffer through and we pass through, and the conditions of body that we pass through. This is also very close to Tibetan monks' idea of the dream yoga, which is known as the Swapna Darshan. So there are several kinds of religious views about dreams that we have had through generations. When we come to the modern day, we go back to Freud. Sigmund Freud, his book, very important book, it changed the whole worldview about dreams and about sleep. That is the Interpretation of Dreams, published in 1899. 123, 4 years have already passed on this book. But he is the first person who says that the human mind is a huge continent, only a shred of that has been discovered or researched or understood so far. And then he says that they represent it's a repository of all kinds of thought, and says they represent the subconscious desires. The dreams represent the subconscious desires, and we cannot share them because of the inhibitions that the society imposes upon us. This opens a whole chapter of whole discussion that we can develop now. But he says more importantly that all our dreams are around the sexual desires. Freud, we know about that. Freud speaks lots about that. So he seems to say that what a virtuous cannot do, the evil do very easily. That he seems to be saying in very clear terms. In his very interesting essay, which I happened to teach at one point of time to the students of MA, which is creative writing and daydreaming, he says creative writing is very close to daydreaming. It's another way of daydreaming. And he says that this is a kind of a wish fulfillment. So writing is a kind of wish fulfillment, something which you couldn't do through the dream you write, and dream becomes a kind of a mediator for the writer, that he writes a poem or a short story or a novel or whatever he does in the fictional or the non-fictional prose. But he talks of id, ego, and superego, and the story has gone far beyond id, ego, and superego. And now people have talked about, in the modern age, after that, we have talked of neurons, we have talked of synapses, we have talked of serotonin, and finally in the biochemistry that people have been researching through. So in 125 years or so, the whole study of the human brain, the human mind, so to say, together, and how it works and how dreams comes to us and how it vanishes and what it leaves behind for us to interpret. This has been a long journey if I don't go to the old and the classical times and the ancient traditions. So even if we take 125 years in mind, we have lots of things to discover into this. You see, sleep mysteries, there are many discourses about that. Sleeplessness, sleepiness and sleep and loss of sleep and deep sleep and oversleep and interrupted sleep and late night sleep and sleepwalking and sleep apnea, which many of us suffer, especially in modern times. And it has become a big issue how to handle the sleep apnea. Similarly, there are other things like, for example, sleep time and sleep variations of the age. And then, more interestingly, so many discourses around that we have had that is about fantasy, about vision, about dream types, about dream times, about daydreaming and early morning dreaming, because we often say that the early morning dream are very true, and वो तो सच हो जाता है जो हम रात को ख्वाब देखते हैं नहीं बल्कि जो सुबह को ख्वाब देखते हैं. That's another story. So master clock, it says there is a master clock in the brain, and that is how it functions. And this master clock regulates our life also, and dreams come in between when the master clock regulates us. There have been great sleepers and there have been great dreamers, as history tells us, as you have very rightly mentioned, which I will not be repeating. But Kumbhakaran, you have already referred to. Nidrasan, he actually wanted to go for Indrasan, but he wrongly said Nidrasan and he got it. And slept for long time, 6 months, and again 1 day, and again 6 months. Same is, there is a parallel in another story, which is Ashab-e Kahf, which is in Surah Kahf of Quran Pak. And there you can see this in my blog on Rekhta, which I have written. There are several blogs which are about a dream, which you will find on Rekhta, which I have written. That a story about Abraham, you have also said. There is also a blog of that which you have on the Rekta website. Then about Yusuf, you have also referred to about the sun and the moon that he said that are bowing down before him, and the 11 stars bowing down. And the father says, don't share all this with your brothers because they are jealous and they will not let you live in peace. And that finally happens when he says that this is going to say that before all of these are going to bow down before you. And when he becomes the second most powerful person in Egypt, they all come to him and bow down, the father, the mother, and the 11 brothers. So that is the way. Pharaoh's or Pharaoh's dreams are also very important to look at. 7 thin cows eating 7 fat cows. And similarly, next he dreams that the 7 heads of grains in a single stalk, and then the withered heads of the stalk devouring the grains. And the interpretation comes, Joseph says, that the 7 fat cows and 7 stalks of grain are in a single step represented prosperity. And the other side, it represents famine. And you know that in the history of Egypt, there are 7 years of famine, which is related to this kind of a dream which Pharaoh had or which Pharaoh had. The story of Zahak is much more interesting when you go to the story of Zahak. Zahak thinks of his or dreams of his own demise and says that 2 men would enter his palace and would kill him. Interpreters said that the person who would bring him down is none other but a person called Faridun, who's not yet born. And Faridun actually was born much later, and he was the person who finally killed him. The story of Heer Ranjha is very, very interesting. Go to folk literature, and we'll talk about it very briefly about a few literary texts that will tell you more about how dreams really function there and how dreams are interpreted by various authors. So the story of Heer Ranjha, after the death of his father, Ranjha was very ill-treated by his brothers and the family. Therefore, he left one night and he had a dream. And in that dream, he had the vision of a beautiful girl called, which later came to be known as Ranjha. And it was the dream which took him out of his house, of his home, and then he wandered from place to place and met Peer Panj. And met the Peer Panj and goes keeps on wandering, finally reaches a place. He leaves his home called Takht Hazara and finally meets Heer. But there are 2 kinds of versions that you come across. One version says that they finally were lost and no one knew where they reached ultimately. And another version says that they finally died and they lie buried in the hometown, in the village where this lady lived, and that is Jhang, which is in Pakistan. That has become a kind of a pilgrimage for all those people who would like to go and pay respect to the 2 great lovers of the past. This also is a part of my blog. So all these that I have referred to, about 6 of them, you can read on the Rekha website where you have these blogs of mine. In Greek literature, you will find that Homer's Iliad in Zeus uses a false dream to persuade Agamemnon to attack Troy. And you know about that history of Troy and that famous dialogue from Shakespeare. I don't want to refer to that because of the time that we already have enough of time. In Russian, you have Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, and there you have Raskolnikov, who's self-willed criminal. And he evolves through his character. He evolves gradually, and finally he realizes what he has done through his dream. He realizes, and he tries to seek some kind of redemption for himself, but he gets his punishment ultimately. In Tolstoy's War and Peace also, we have the similar kind of Pere has a very terrifying dream, and he's attacked by dogs, he thinks. And that is the kind of a virtue, and that is how he suffers. In English, I think the best way to look at the dreams comes from Shakespeare, that all-time master. In Tempest, he says, and I must read it out to you, "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." This is a wonderful summing up of the entire talk for it that you have given what I'm trying to speak to you. He says, I'm repeating it, 1, we are such a stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. And then, in a surreal situation, Bottom concedes at the end of the play, I have had a dream. Past the wit of man to say what dream it was. Man is but an ass if you go out about expound his dream. And at the end of the play, Puck makes a disclaimer saying that the audience should not be offended by the play, as it is nothing more than a dream. Shakespeare sums it up, the entire philosophy of dream and the entire theory of dream, he sums it up in 2 dialogues, some coming from Puck and coming from Bottom. Then Coleridge's Kubla Khan, a very wonderful poem that you must have come across and must have read, where he says, in Xanadu did Kubla Khan, wonderful poem, a stately pleasure dome degree. This was a dream poem. He had this poem in his dream. And he woke up and he took up his pen and finally sat writing, and he wrote a few lines, and there was a knock at the door. A visitor from Porlock had come. He went, opened the door, entertained that guest, and by the time he left, he came back to his table, but he couldn't write the poem because the spirit had simply vanished. Therefore, it became a very enigmatic poem to teach in the class for me. And there are hundreds of interpretations that I have had about this poem, because it is a study into the psychology of the human being, the writer, the poet, and Kubla Khan and Xanadu and the serpentine roads that are passing through that area. So it's a wonder. In Daphne de Maurier, that is another very interesting story in Rebecca that you find. The opening paragraph is about death itself and about the dream itself. In George Orwell, 1984, also you will find the same kind of a situation. In Lewis Carroll's Alice in the Wonderland, which is a wonderful text to read, an all-time great text, one of the great texts of all times, Alice gets lost in a dream state and realizes the realities of the world through the dreams that she passes through. James Joyce's Finnegan Wakes is another very important literary text of modern fiction. And you will find that there's the most complex text, and it's also based on a dream, a very mystifying kind of a situation. That I'll take you to the Persian. In Shahnama, there are 80.
Anisa, we just go in. We will go into the question answer session, and then certain other commentaries can be done there, because the time is really limited.
Okay, then I stop here. Because I had a few things to relate, but let it be. I had some very important points to relate, but let it be.
Well, if you can finish in a minute, time.
No. Minute doesn't make any sense to me. I had some very important points to relate, but I'm sorry, I'm offended. Sorry.
So it has to be one lecture and only.
I understand.
Two parallel lectures are a little bit too much. Sorry for that, but one has to realize that concluding and introductory remarks should be brief. Here is the next Saturday's, upcoming Saturday's event with Professor Harbans Mukhia, the past and present of Indian history, pre and post independence. I think Professor Mukhia is also in the audience, and Professor Farhat Nasreen will be giving the introductory remarks, and Professor Bodh Prakash, who is a very well-known professor of partition literature, will also give the concluding remarks. Now we go to question answer session. Hello, Faisal. Today we don't have our regular moderator, Dr. Rafa Hussain, so Mirza Faisal Beg, our host, will take over and will handle the question answer session, primarily addressed to Professor Farhat Nasreen. All right, Faisal.
Okay, let me first allow everyone to be able to unmute themselves. Okay, so I'll take questions from raise your hands, or I would rather like you to raise your hands because it's difficult to manage the chats, but I'll keep an eye on the chat also. So I see Rudranshu has raised his digital hand. So Rudranshu, you want to go ahead and keep your question brief, please? And I would just request our guests to also keep the answer brief.
Well, good evening to the two speakers. The lecture was enlightening indeed. My question would be that Dr. Kalam once said that dreams are not what you see in your sleep, but dreams are those that do not allow you to sleep. So how would one decode this statement of his in the context of Yog Nidra?
Can I take that?
Yes.
Yeah, so you have this amazing concept where it is stated in the Upanishads that someone who says the slayer thinks that he's slaying, that then he's mistaken. And if the slain thinks that he's been slain, then he's also mistaken. So na koi marta hai aur na koi marta hai. Na koi marta hai, na koi marta hai. There's all that we have around us is all an illusion. And therefore, because you really don't know, because you have this whole idea of Maya, because everything that is here is all falsehood, it's mithya, the life here it means nothing. So when the waking world means nothing, then that too is an illusion, because it's a Maya or it's a Leela, the play of gods. You have the concept of Leela and Maya. So therefore, of course, all of it is an illusion, surely. It's just the way that you look at it. And also the idea that, you, of course, and there is this idea of living the dream. So yeah, you can always dream and live the dream. That is something that's used like a proverb too.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I don't see anything in the chat. Please raise your hand.
Thank you. It's a remarkable presentations today. Being a biologist, I knowing about chronobiology when I was a student, Madre Kamaraj University. That's a universal. That's a Nobel Prize came 5 years ago for circadian concept of clock genes. So I think this your presentation and also the concluded remarks clearly talked about the universal nature of dreams. I think it's also the same with the scientific discovery. And that's what I just wanted to compliment you for remarkable lecture today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jabbar Saab. That's so very encouraging. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, floor is open. Anybody else? Looks like most people are in the dreams.
Professor David wants to say something.
All right, Professor David, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to respond. First of all, thank you very much for this amazing survey of what dreams have been in different cultures at different times. And the question that Dr. Jamia just raised about the universality. And the other side of it is what people have interpreted dreams to mean. So those are two different levels. So the individual's interpretation of the dreams, but also the theories of dreams that have been set out over the years in different places and different cultures, whether it predicts the future or tells something about your personality and so on, that has changed. And people have written about what's called dream cultures, that different societies and different cultures make dreams, interpret dreams in different ways. It's with Freud and so on, it's taken on a different kind of meaning than it did in the times of when we're reading the Quran and talking about Yusuf and his interpretation of dreams, which are all about predicting the future. So it's an incredibly rich subject, and you have given us a lot to think about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. We could well think about the politics of dreams, like you said.
Right.
The politics of dreams, there could be. Thank you.
So actually, I have, this is Muazzam Siddiqui. So I wanted to know what Carl Jung has to say about these kind of dreams.
I'm clueless, sir.
And since you were talking about Maya, so I was reminded of, an interesting kind of a joke. Once Jagat Guru Shankaracharya was walking in a bazaar talking to one of his disciples, and all of a sudden everybody started running and they said that ek mast hathi aa raha hai. Or Jagat Guru also started running. Then the disciple told Jagat Guru, Guruji, you were saying that everything is Maya. How come you are running away? So then Jagat Guru says while running, our running from the elephant is also Maya.
But he also then says, and then run. The next line is that now you better run, because there's it's all Maya, but you better live within the Maya.
Right. And also there are many, because I studied Mirza Abdul Qadir Bedil. So Bedil has many dreams, which he talks about in his autobiography. And there is one dream which, keep coming, and he hears a voice in his dream, as ma ba mast harche guim ma hamcho tui digar che guim. It is from us to ourselves, whatever I say. And we are just like you. There is nothing else to say. And Bedil has this dream, just this voice, about 3 times. And finally, he meets the person whose voice it was when he moves to Delhi. So he was having this dream, just hearing this voice, while he was in Bihar and in Cuttack, Orissa. And when he arrives in Delhi, the person whose voice it was in the dream, so he finally meets Bedil. Bedil is attending a dawat, a feast among the group of Sufis and all that. So this gentleman comes and he holds Bedil by hand and walks away with him. And that is the voice that Bedil had been hearing. And that person was named Shah Kabuli, who was a Majzub. And people, used to say that Shah Kabuli does not talk to anyone.
All right.
Thank you, Muslim Saab. Seema Saiba.
Right.
Please go ahead.
So these are, how would you classify these kind of dreams, where he is actually knowing what.
Gee. So let's move to other questions.
Yeah, Farhat, I just wanted to know, because you ended your lecture with, your mother's quotations and how she would wake you up, which was very, very interesting for me. So I was just wondering, how laziness and sleep have actually been perceived beyond the mystical and the spiritual, but as in lived experience in history, in all the sources that you've been looking at, which are very rich, and I hope to read them very soon. So if you could just kind of talk about that, because that was very interesting the way you ended.
Thank you so much. Let me just introduce Seema. Seema Bava is the head of the Department of History of Delhi University. And we are planning to, the paper that I presented is supposed to be a part of a book that she is editing for the Bloomsbury publications. So thank you, Seema, for that question. Certainly, I think in the commoner's life, sleep has been completely underrated. And there is so much of emphasis on hard work that certainly it's underrated, something that people have always craved for. That is why you have so many songs, around losing sleep, so many poetry, so much of poetry where you find that there is less restlessness and there is worry, which loss of sleep signifies. So it's something that people have always compromised on for worldly gains. So that is there. And I think Bertrand Russell says that, once there was the Industrial Revolution and materialism increased, then you find that leisure and sleep, both those kind of things were undermined. And the only thing which was the marker of success was money. and possessions, that became the marker of success. But I think if we change the marker of success, say, for example, if the marker of success is a good night's sleep, a peaceful mind, if we have those kind of markers of success only, then something is going to change. Otherwise, the way that we are moving, we're going to be soon in a lot of trouble because we don't give enough importance to sleep at all. There are students who have pills to keep themselves awake because they have to write an examination. So I think we have to change our priorities clearly and have a different criteria for success. Like, I'll give you a quick example that comes from a book from Shikha. Shikha writes that there was once a man who had a very difficult decision to make and he didn't know how to make the right choice. So he called in a lot of people and nobody could advise him correctly. So finally he went to his mother and he asked her that, what should I do? She said, beta, it's simple. You choose that thing which will ensure that you can come back to bed and sleep comfortably each night. Pick up that choice. And then it was clear which the choice was going to be. So that's, I mean, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nawab Saab. Nawab Siddiqui.
You have given a great lecture. I actually do not believe in dreams. However, I would like to know, how do you differentiate a good dream from a bad dream?
I think a good dream would be something that makes people feel happy in their sleep, because happiness is something that we are all looking for at the end of the day. We just want to be happy. So if in your sleep there's something that you see that makes you happy, good, it's a good dream. And if it makes you worried in your sleep also, then certainly it's a nightmare then. I think happiness is the criteria.
When I was a kid, I always saw that I'm falling from a hill all the way down. And actually I had the dream until I was maybe 10 years or 11 years of age. After that, that dream disappeared. So I always in the morning felt that I needed to work hard because I am going to fall. And I did work hard as a student. So actually, I could not interpret the dream, but maybe you could shed some light on it.
Well, let me tell you then that this particular dream that you're falling from a height is noted in almost all the dream journals or from all the cultures, whether it is Chinese or Sumerian or Arabic or Hindustani, Sanskrit, anywhere. Everywhere you will find this dream of falling from a height. And then you suddenly get up because you feel that you've fallen. So this is generally supposed to be a dream where there is some kind of an emotional insecurity, because I did read the interpretations of some of the dreams while preparing for this lecture. And this is a very common dream. It is found in almost all cultures.
It forced me to work hard.
See,
okay.
That's how
Thank you. Let's move on to the next,
yourself.
Dr. Tariq Ashraf.
Thank you for the response.
Thank you.
Dr. Tariq Ashraf, unmute yourself. Okay, let's move to Professor Shikha Kapoor.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. This is evening in India.
Hi, Shikha.
So that was a beautiful lecture, and I was sitting through this. And at the same time, I am reminded of the saying that sleep away your worries. So if you have a very important problem that you are mulling over, so it's best that you take a nap, you go to sleep. And I am reminded of my class 12 NCERT book, where we look up at the benzene ring, and Kekule actually sleeps over his problem while he's, looking at the structure of benzene. So he comes up with the idea of, the snake has its tail in its mouth, So that's how the benzene structure comes to him, is revealed to him in his dream. So this whole power of, creative dreaming, lucid dreaming, what would your take be on that?
I think it's a big world out there. It's a big world out there. And
Yes.
yeah, and that word would mean different things to different people. So it has, like somebody just said that that particular dream, it's a very common dream across all cultures, but it meant something specific to him. He interpreted it in a certain way and started working in that direction. I think it's amazing, and I think we need to take our sleep and dreams a little more seriously, and at least take our sleep a little more seriously. Kind of find a balance somewhere.
Yes,
Thank
and
you,
the creativity that it holds, we have to also keep that in mind.
Yes, and also to keep decluttering our heads.
Hey, Dr. Tariq.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Nasreen, for your wonderful talk. This was a pleasure to listen to.
Thank you, Tariq sir.
Offbeat topic. My question is about when I was teenager, I used to have a dream that somebody is running after me, is chasing me, and I mean this was very regular kind of dream. So and I used to get scared, and I used to get up during my sleep. So this was this continued for quite long. Then I consulted someone, and I went to a Maulana actually, and after a lot of resistance, and I spoke to him, and he gave me some lemon and asked me to deposit this lemon at some place, and then the whole thing stopped. So I was just wondering whether how it really works. Do you have any explanation for this actually happened?
That's really mysterious. Oh, no. Yeah, that's really mysterious, But I've heard that there are so many creative writers and creative thinkers from some of the lyricists from the film industry in Mumbai. I would not take their names here, but I know them, and I know that they sleep in specific places, in some dargah or some particular temple, when they have to compose a song and they have this writer's block. So they actually go to sleep in those places, and then they come back inspired. So they believe in that. So maybe the belief works for them, or however this happens. But this is in the current times, that there are people who are actually doing that, and they are very, very successful writers. So there are mysteries all around us, I think.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mansoor. Mansoor Ahmed Siddiqui. Okay, I don't have anyone else, Razi bhai.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Mansoor साहब कुछ बोलना है तो रुकिए मत, just say.
Yes, thank you. My question is very simple. Yes, I want to ask just, can we take the protection in the dreams? Can we take the protection in the dreams? I'm not asking about the daydreams. Can we take the protection in the dreams? Actually, one lyricist says that, yes, just listen to me. One lyricist says that, नींद आ जाए तो क्या महफिले बरपा देखूं, आंख खुल जाए तो तन्हाई का सेहरा देखूं. Now, in the light of this couplet, please explain that how can we take protection, or some type of any type of protection that provided by these dreams.
Okay, all right. I think the only protection that we can have is that we don't kind of give them a damn. We just dream them and forget about it. Just as we say that, you forget whatever happened in the day, whatever happened in your office, just forget about it. So keep deleting your dreams. It's like that. You just press the delete button. That's what the Yoga Nidra is about, that whatever crap you have in your head, you just have to keep throwing it out like you're throwing stuff into the dustbin. So you just throw it into the dustbin.
That's where I think the illusion of dream comes. You don't have a protection in dream. So if you go in the rational minds, there are a couple of scientists here. One is certainly spiritual also, another has nothing to do with anything except science and social values. So I think I will invite them also very briefly say say something. Dr. Abdul Jabbar?
No, I think
you will pass.
This is something I'm not qualified to really talk about. I read about stuff because of being a biologist. Interpretations of dreams, I think people talked about, I read about, also the Quran. It's a very comprehensive look at social, cultural dimension of what dreams are all about. That's what Professor were talking about. So in terms of, the science, if you want, I don't think we can narrow everything to the basic concepts of biology, molecular biology. That's what they are trying to do in clock genes, it's the chronobiology. It gives you information. It really gives you the detailed information about how the systems work in the, so at the molecular level. But I think it's the larger concept of, the social constructs, those kind of stuff. I think it's I don't have any qualification on that. It's a really great to listen to the talk. One thing I want to talk about, you talked about the clearing the mind. I think J. Krishnamurti was, I read all his work. I'm kind of a fan of J. Krishnamurti. He talks about everybody has to, you have to forget the past. You have to, the death. I don't know exactly the word you're using. So basically what you're saying, there's a cluttering effect in the mind. So yeah, somehow you have to figure out to kind of get that away. You have to live, you have to kind of, past is past, you just move on.
All right.
So I think I finished that thought. I think it's also the scientific level, there is, when you sleep, apparently there's a cells come to the brain cells, they're clearing up the other lot of debris. So it's thank you for that.
So these are debris, actually, the brain cells. So, sorry, I'm not lessening the significance of dreams. I'm just saying scientifically. So Ravi Sinha Sahab is another one who would like to make a brief comment, what he thinks. Ravi Sahab?
I'm sorry, my screen kept getting lost. Congratulations, Professor Nasreen, for such fascinating talk and such your erudition and your research is really remarkable. I was just mesmerized by all that you were saying, and I do not want to spoil the poetry and the mystery of what you had to say, but still I cannot resist the temptation of expressing my curiosity that if you talk of something like sleep and dream, where does one draw the line between experience and knowledge? Only I can experience myself. So does that qualify me as the best knower of me, or am I the least qualified to know myself? I mean, a metaphor comes to my mind when I was listening to you, that I seem to be like I means any individual, any being, any person. I seem to be like a musical instrument, a sitar or whatever, on which the whole world is playing, but only I can hear the music. If only I can hear the music, do I know? Do I am the one who best how music is being produced, or does the player know how the music is being produced? So if somehow in producing the music, my body and my being is involved, and the music is accessible only to me, I don't know whether I can know about the whole process of music, you know. I can enjoy the dreams or I can be horrified by the dreams, but do I know where do those dreams come from and what do they say? For that, probably science will be needed, and science has this habit of destroying some poetry and all mystery. So I am very, you know, I feel sorry about, you know, this whole relationship between science and mystery. So that's
all right. All right. So I'm going to ask, hello?
Can I respond to Ravi sir's comments?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think Ravi sir, you are quite a philosopher, because surely I think no one can know you as well as you do. Only you can actually understand yourself the best, and that's something that we don't do because we don't give enough time to listen to ourselves. So that I think I totally agree with you. You are the best person who knows you. And the other thing which is important is that we must insist on being ourselves. We must insist on being ourselves and let the world, you know, say whatever they have. And the other thing, that this whole space is so mysterious, that there's this beautiful song from Pakiza which says ki chalo dildar chalo chand ke paar chalo hame tayyar chalo, and at the same time this woman then says that हम नशे में है संभालो हमें तुम, नींद आती है जगा लो हमें तुम। तो जब जग जाएंगे तो क्या चांद के पार जाने की कोई गुंजाइश है उसके बाद? There isn't any. Right. So where is the space? I mean, this is absolutely beautiful, but unreachable almost. Thank you.
All right, good. So our senior friend and quite a philosopher among us, Dr. Nazir Ahmed, please, some comments from you.
जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। छोटा सा एक comment था।
English, because Jabbar Sahib is last.
Okay.
Sorry.
The Sufis look upon dreams as a part of the continuity of experience, not as something different from the continuity of experience. They look upon it as a kashaf, unveiling, that takes place all the way from the Wahdaniyat to the Alam-e-Ajsam. So if it is a bridge, then the state of dreams has elements from both Alam-e-Arwah, which is the world of spirituality, and Alam-e-Ajsam, which is the world of Ajsam or creation. So from this continuous perspective, dreaming is not another state, but it is a part of the overall human experience, all the way from experiencing the divine to experiencing the most mundane. If you would be kind enough to comment on that, please.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Those remarks. Thank you, sir.
He's asking for your remarks.
No, I thought that he was telling us about this continuity, and sure, I agree. The Sufis did think like that, because sleeping was also a part of the religious exercise for them. So there was this spiritual idea behind sleeping, like it was supposed to be a gift from God. And there are n number of dreams listed in, say, for example, the Kashful Mahjoob, whole lot of them about the mystics and what are the kind of dreams that they had. And some of those dreams, as interpreted by Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia, would also have lessons on humility, lessons on humanism, and so on and so forth. So, sure. Those were important comments that you made, sir. Thank you.
Our own Amir Bhai, Dr. Sayyid Amir, from our Aligarh Association and Group. Please, last word.
Thank you, Razi, putting me on this spot. I join everybody in my admiration to the quality of talk and lecture and the amount of data and information you have brought to bear on your talk. Unfortunately, I am in that minority. Really, I have no great faith in the predictive value of the dreams. I think the science of sleep and the mind is still evolving, unfolding. And the only thing I feel from I'm just talking about the mortals like me, not saints like Nizamuddin Aulia, and that may be a different story. Most of the time I found that the mind is only sorting out in your dreams what you usually experience in the daytime. Sometimes issues become clear, you have been puzzled or you can't remember or solve the problems, but they are solved in the night because the mind, like a computer, is in the dream, is sorting its folders and arranging, organizing the information. And apart from that, I mean, the only thing they say that you never dream about colors. When you dream something, you never see any colors. And my experience is that you only see dreams about, I mean, I see my friends and my relations whom who passed away, even some alive. But that's the recreated of the things which already I have experienced. And so I'm sorry that I do not share the mysteries. And in the olden days, they used to, kings employ people who were interpreting the dreams in 200 different ways. Mine is a very simple and probably not all that romantic view of dreams. I'm sorry.
All right. So, well, I thought that this is the end, but I just remembered that Dr. Farida Khanum, I think daughter of our Maulana Wahiduddin Khan Sahab, is also here. So if you would like to say a few words, please unmute yourself. Dr. Farida. She's connected, but she's not responding. All right, so this is it, I guess. It is 2 hours past. It's a lot of engaging session, really. As Amir Bhai said, and as Ravi Saab said, I'm also a student of science, but obviously a little more part in the spiritual or the practicing side also of me. In spite of that, I'll say that dreams to me is what you are either reading or thinking, and that's the reflection. I remember very well at a very tender age, almost like 14 or 15 years of age, I read one of the big novels on Second World War, and that was like, I read it, and I was, for next 10 years, almost every alternate night, I was on the Western Front fighting with Hitler. So that was really the one of the things that I could think of. But dreams are always like what you think about all the time, engaged. It doesn't come in a very clear way. But anyway, this was really very engaging session. And
so let's carry a dream today that India gets rid of fanaticism as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's a dream.
Can I say something, Raziuddin Saab?
Yeah.
Like you just said that dreams, we dream of things that we read about and we think about and the people we meet and so on. And I was writing this book, The Great Mughals. I started dreaming of Babur. And you would believe it, I literally fell in love with him. I kept dreaming of him so often, and I couldn't have imagined that I will fall in love with some emperor who died ages ago, but I did. So yeah,
UAP will be imposed upon you if you
be careful. That too, Babur, not Humayun. I mean, you know, the Humayun is a more mellowed personality. Nobody will care about Humayun. But if you obviously Babar is there is the issue.
Babar and Aurangzeb are the biggest villains
Those are
for this
issues.
government.
No, actually, Aurangzeb is the issue. Babar is the symbol. No, I mean that's the target. So
Well, I don't like. I hate Aurangzeb to balance that.
And anybody who will be interested for tomorrow's talk, please write to me, and I can forward that Zoom link for Professor Khudbhai's talk, Parvez Khudbhai's talk. Tomorrow at what time is that, Ravi Sahab?
I think 8:30.
Tomorrow,
Yes, yeah.
tomorrow at 6 p.m. India Standard Times, which will be 8:30 Eastern Standard Time here in US.
Wow, quite early for Nasir Sahab. It will be in California side. It will be very early.
That we cannot manage. We have to.
Yeah, I understand. All right. So sure.
Do you record it so it can be, you can watch it later on, or?
We do put it on YouTube after it gets edited. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Please send us the link.
Yeah, sure.
I will write to you.
All right.
I have it.
Okay. So thank you all. Thank you, Farhat, Aqil Saab, and Anisur Rahman Saab left. I mean, he couldn't finish, and I'm sorry for that. I have to. I mean, we have to focus on one lecture that was unfortunately, he was doing very well, but I mean, that kept on going. So that becomes sometimes an issue. On next week is another very engaging, hopefully, session. And Farhat is going to introduce Professor Mukhya, who is a very well-known figure. So let's hope to meet again after 1 week or tomorrow. Thank you all.